This is a 14 by 18 painting done with a palette knife as well as a soft synthetic brush for doing glazing techniques. It's very definitely a bright painting, and to do a bright painting you need to work with the colors that are around the outside edge of a color wheel. And let me show you what I mean. So here's one color wheel that I created with some of the colors that I use fairly often. And what I mean by the outside of the color wheel are these nice bright colors. As you move to the inside of a color wheel, you get more neutral colors. That happens when you mix two opposite colors together and they become more neutral or gray as you come to the middle. And you can also use, for creating neutrals, if you don't want to actually create them by mixing color, you can buy things like raw umber, burnt umber, raw sienna, those kind of more neutrals. But for painting this image, the colors, to keep them bright, I went with the outside of the color wheel, and then to create contrast I used some neutrals. So you can create neutrals by using things like the raw umbers, burnt umbers, those kind of color, or you can take two opposite colors on the wheel, mix them together and create neutrals that way. So for instance, in the foreground of this there's a lot of orange color, and the complement, or almost a complement, I call it a discord, is purple. So I mix some purples, put them next to the oranges in the foreground, and it creates a nice little zing and contrast and makes those brights look even brighter. What else is about this painting? The design. The design is, it has lines that are radiating out like from the spokes of a wheel. So you've got you know, the distant tree and the mountain, and all the lines kind of come angling out from that. So your eye zooms in to the back of the painting, creating a lot of energy and force. It's a really fun design to create, and along with the bright colors, it creates quite an impact. So anyway, I hope you like this video, and if you do like it, hit the like button and subscribe to see future videos. Take care. I was inspired to do this scene by a hike I did in Kokanee Provincial Park a few summers ago. I really love the radiating lines that come out from near the center of the painting, creating so much energy. As usual, I start on a color ground using some white chalk to do my drawing, just getting the basic shapes down before I put down a more permanent line drawing. When drawing, I look past all the detail and look for the main shapes of all the elements. While I'm drawing inside of each of these third boxes, I'm also thinking of thirds within the thirds. I want to put all the elements on areas that will look pleasing to the eye. Here I was trying out an acrylic paint pen for the first time, and I quite liked it. I got a little bit stuck on the chalk in a few places, but a little easier to use than the paintbrush. I use a moist paper towel to wipe off that chalk. Here I have a soupy mixture of Dioxazine purple, and I've added GAC 500, which is an acrylic polymer medium, and I'm using one of my smaller palette knives. This purple color placed on the Pyrrole red is going to look really blackish by the time it dries. You'll no longer see the purple as much as when it was first wet. Here I'm adding Chromium oxide green straight from the tube. This color is very versatile. It's one of my favorite greens. It looks very natural, and it's from the tube state, and when I tint it, it makes a really nice blue-green color. Here I'm adding a mixture of cadmium yellow medium and white. I'm using it quite thick, and I don't have any GAC 500. I'm making sure while I do this not to cover all the red. This is cadmium orange with some white to tint it, and I'm placing it where the fallen logs in the water will be. I didn't show it in the video, but I took some titanium white and placed it up where I'm putting the white with the phthalo blue at this point. All the colors that I have placed so far, I plan to put a glaze of nickel Azo Yellow. These tints of phthalo blue represent where the bright greens will go. This is where the sun is hitting the edges of the trees. This is the fun part. Here I'm adding nickel azo yellow, turning the blues into greens, and the white area down below in the light blues will be a really bright yellow and a nice bright light green color. The yellows I have in the background will become a little bit more bright by adding that yellow on top. And then these oranges that I had tinted in the foreground for the logs, they'll become a little bit warmer and brighter looking as well. I keep a wet paper towel on hand to wipe off where I put too much of the yellow color. Now that I've done with that yellow glaze, I'm moving on to Dioxazine purple, which I've tinted with some titanium white. I'm looking for the areas that are going to be cool and within the water, and also on the tree trunks and various other areas. Notice that I'm allowing bits of that background red color to show through. I'm trying not to cover it all up as I go. I also use these color shapers. They have rubber tipped ends and they're nice for pushing paint around and creating marks. These color shapers come in many different sizes and shapes. Whenever evaluating shades for color, I make sure that I squint my eyes. I see now that I need to add more white to my tinted purple mixture to get the highlights on some of the rocks in the foreground. I'm going to add some more white to that same purple color and block in that distant mountain. These colors I'm placing are an undercolor. I plan to do glazes later on. Once I'm happy with the shades of purple that I have placed on the canvas, I will place glazes of color on top as I'm doing here. This is Phthalo Blue Red Shade with GAC 500. Phthalo Blue Red Shade is much warmer than Phthalo Blue Blue Shade. By adding this blue color, I'm darkening all the areas where I want those darker blues. Here I'm adding Cadmium Yellow Deep. I have 3 yellows that I use in the cadmiums. That's Cadmium Yellow Light, Cadmium Yellow Medium, and Cadmium Yellow Deep. Phthalo Blue Green Shade is a cool color, and Cadmium Yellow Deep is a warm color. When you put a warm and a cool color in a mixture, they end up being a little bit duller. This is what I wanted to create those more natural greens. Placing this Phthalo Blue Green shade over top of the clean blue tints creates a bright green. Titanium white is a very opaque paint. By adding it to the more transparent phthalo blue, this tint of phthalo blue becomes opaque. While I have this light blue, I'm looking for other places to put this color, and some places I'm scumbling very lightly and other places putting on very thick. Here I'm adding a little bit of white with a teeny bit of blue added to it. Picking up that blue shape with some more ripples. The gray color that I've mixed here is made with Phthalo Blue and Pyrrole Red Light. They are complements on the color wheel and make really great blacks and grays. I decided to use these 2 colors in particular because they are the 2 colors I've used in the painting, so I'm ensured to have color harmony. One of the methods to make the rest of the painting look bright is to have some places that have these gray neutral colors. To add the highlights onto these rocks, I've taken titanium white and added a tiny touch of yellow and a tiny bit of purple. That way there's a little bit of neutrality to this warm white. This is a stage of the painting where we're adding smaller marks and just looking around for the places to add that final definition and final shade. And this is also where the painting really comes alive. As I add these marks, I'm still continuing to be aware of how much of that red I leave behind. There might only be little bits of red specks, but these little bits of red running throughout the painting create nice color continuity. To make these rocks look like they belong in terms of color, I've taken Phthalo Blue Green shade and done a glaze over top. Now I'm going back to this Phthalo Blue with the tint and gone over top of that glazed color again, just to create texture and more interesting color breaks. As I get closer to the end of the painting, I start to look at the painting overall, and see where I need to make changes. Here I'm adding more of that Phthalo Blue tint that I plan to glaze with nickel Azo Yellow. I want to make these trees come more forward of the trees in the background. Nickel Azo Yellow is a very transparent color. Here I'm adding a glaze of transparent red oxide. This is helping to make those bushes in the background feel further behind. That red oxide also will dull down some of the greens and some of these orange colors in the foreground. To further darken the shadows, I'm adding a glaze of Dioxazine purple. To create some more light on the edge of the trees, I've added Cadmium yellow medium. When adding white to chromium green oxide, it makes a nice blue-green. I added this to the mountains to make them sit further back. I decided to make the sky yellow to bring some of that yellow color up so it's balancing with the bottom half of the painting. Here I'm adding some negative space sky holes into the top half of the painting. The shadows on the top right of the painting were a little bit too dark, so I went back to the chromium oxide green and added it on that corner. To balance that change of color on the top right, I've added some greens in other places as well. I thought I'd bring some of that Dioxazine purple into a few places on the tree trunks and create a few more value changes as well. This Phthalo Blue glaze is helping the top right branches look more in shadow. Almost there, but not quite. I think the background mountain would look better if it was more in the violet and blue colors. I also decided to change the distant tree into yellow-green with a little bit of orange. I think we're done. Coming up is a list of colors. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for notice of new videos. Take care. See you next time.